morning sun cast long shadows across the agricultural domes of New Geneva, when the Zephyrian battlecruisers descended like metallic vultures from the pale sky. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck window, watching the massive ships hover above the settlement. Their hulls gleamed with an alien beauty that masked the horror about to unfold. All colonists report to the central plaza immediately. The translation devices crackled throughout the dome. The voice carried the cold authority that had become familiar across human space over the past year. The Galactic Empire had been systematically cataloging human colonies, claiming it was for administrative purposes. Sarah gathered her medical supplies and joined the stream of colonists moving toward the plaza. As the chief medical officer for New Geneva, she had treated injuries from previous Imperial inspections. The aliens seemed particularly interested in human biology, often taking tissue samples and conducting what they called genetic assessments. The Zephyrians stood 7 feet tall, their scaled skin shifting between deep blue and purple depending on their mood. Their forearms moved with mechanical precision as they herded the 1,000 colonists into organized groups. Sarah noticed they were separating people by gender, something they had never done before. Commander WarHFY, the lead Zephyrian, stepped onto a raised platform. His translator box amplified his voice across the plaza. Humans of New Geneva, the Galactic Council has reviewed your species' genetic profile. We have determined that human females possess unique reproductive capabilities that could strengthen our empire's bloodlines. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She glanced around and saw the fear in other women's eyes. The men looked confused and angry, sensing something terrible was about to happen, but not yet understanding what. All human females will be relocated to breeding facilities on Zephyr Prime, WarHFY continued. Males will be reassigned to labor colonies. This transition begins now. The plaza erupted in chaos. Families tried to run toward each other, but the Zephyrian soldiers formed barriers with their energy weapons. Sarah watched in horror as couples were torn apart, children ripped from their parents' arms. The aliens moved with ruthless efficiency, as if they had done this many times before. "You can't do this," shouted David Martinez, New Geneva's elected leader. He pushed through the crowd toward the platform. "These are families. We have rights under galactic law." WarHFY's scales shifted to a darker purple. "Your species has no rights. You are a recent addition to the galaxy, barely past your primitive phase. The Council has voted. Human females are now property of the Empire." David lunged forward, but a Zephyrian soldier caught him with a blast of energy that sent him sprawling. Sarah ran to help him, but more soldiers blocked her path. Around the plaza, similar scenes played out as humans tried desperately to stay together. The soldiers began loading women and children into transport ships. Sarah found herself pushed toward one of the vessels, her medical bag clutched tightly in her hands. She turned back to see the men being forced into different ships, their faces filled with anguish and rage. As her transport lifted off, Sarah pressed against a small window and watched New Geneva shrink below. She could see the agricultural domes, the solar collectors, the small homes where families had built new lives on the frontier. Now it all meant nothing. The journey to the processing station took 3 days. Sarah tried to care for the other women and children in the cramped transport, but their captors provided minimal food and water. Many of the younger children cried constantly for their fathers. The older women sat in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of what had happened. On the second day, Sarah overheard 2 Zephyrian guards talking in their native language. Her translation implant picked up fragments of their conversation. They were discussing quotas, mentioning other human colonies that had been processed. This wasn't an isolated incident. The Empire was systematically harvesting human women across known space. When they finally reached the processing station, Sarah saw the full scope of the operation. Hundreds of ships were docked at the massive facility. Thousands of human women were being sorted and cataloged like cargo. The efficiency was terrifying. Sarah was assigned to Medical Block 7 along with other women who had health training. The Zephyrians wanted to keep their breeding stock in good condition. As she was processed through the medical evaluation, Sarah made mental notes of everything she saw. Guard rotations, facility layouts, security protocols. If there was any chance of escape or resistance, she needed to gather intelligence. That night, as she lay on a hard bunk surrounded by sobbing women, Sarah thought about her husband Marcus back on Earth. He was a sniper instructor for the Colonial Defense Force, training settlers to protect their communities from hostile wildlife and raiders. She wondered if he even knew what had happened yet. The communication networks between human colonies were slow and unreliable. It could be weeks before news of the New Geneva massacre reached Earth. By then, how many other colonies would have been hit? How many more families would be destroyed? Sarah closed her eyes and tried to remember Marcus's face, his voice, the way he looked when he was teaching marksmanship to young colonists. Patience and precision, he always said. Those two things can overcome any enemy, no matter how big or powerful they seem. She held on to those words as she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the sounds of heartbreak and despair. Somewhere out there, humanity would learn what had happened. And when they did, Sarah suspected the Galactic Empire would discover exactly what human males were capable of when their families were threatened. The Zephyrians had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. They had focused on human females' reproductive potential, while completely underestimating the protective instincts and combat capabilities of human males. That oversight would prove to be their undoing. But for now, Sarah and thousands of other women could only wait and hope that rescue would come before it was too late. Marcus Chen received the message while he was on the rifle range, teaching a group of young colonists how to account for wind drift at extreme distances. The communication pad buzzed insistently until he finally stepped away from his students and activated the encrypted channel. The holographic face of Admiral Harrison Walsh materialized above the device. Marcus had served under Walsh during the Proxima conflict 15 years ago, before settling down with Sarah on New Geneva. The Admiral's expression was grim, his usual commanding presence shadowed by something Marcus had never seen before: raw grief. "Marcus, I need you to sit down for this," Walsh began. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire attacked New Geneva. The entire colony was taken. All male colonists were shipped to labor camps. The women and children— Walsh paused, his jaw working silently for a moment. The women and children were taken to breeding facilities. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. The rifle range, the sound of distant gunfire, the warm afternoon air, everything became surreal and distant. "Sarah," he managed to whisper. "We don't know her status yet." But Marcus, this wasn't an isolated incident. In the past week, 17 human colonies have been hit. The pattern is always the same. They're calling it a genetic integration program. The Galactic Council claims they have the legal authority under Section 47 of the Species Classification Act. Marcus's hands began to shake. The device trembled in his grip as images flashed through his mind. Sarah's laugh when she successfully synthesized a new antibiotic, her concentration as she worked in the medical bay, the way she looked at him when she talked about starting a family once the colony was more established. "The government is trying to negotiate through diplomatic channels," Walsh continued. "But the Empire isn't responding to our communications. They seem to view us as little more than livestock. Marcus, I'm calling you back to active duty. We need our best people for what's coming." "What's coming?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew. "We're going to get our people back. All of them. And we're going to make sure this never happens again." Walsh's expression hardened. "I'm reactivating the Sniper Corps. Every long-range specialist we've ever trained is being recalled. We're going to show these aliens what humans do when our families are threatened." Marcus ended the call and sat in silence for several minutes. Around him, the colonist trainees continued their practice, unaware that their instructor's world had just collapsed. He watched a young woman named Elena adjust her scope, following his instructions from earlier in the day. She reminded him of Sarah in some ways. The same determined focus, the same careful attention to detail. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent years teaching people to protect their communities, only to be away when his own wife needed protection. The guilt hit him like a physical blow, followed immediately by something much more dangerous: cold, calculating rage. Marcus stood up and walked to the equipment locker. He pulled out his personal rifle, a modified Mark 7 precision instrument that he had crafted himself over the course of 5 years. The weapon was chambered for high-velocity flechette rounds capable of penetrating most known alien armor types. He had designed it during the Proxima conflict after studying Zephyrian defensive capabilities. "Sir?" Elena approached cautiously. "Is everything all right?" Marcus looked at her, seeing not just a student but a potential soldier. If the Empire was systematically targeting human colonies, nowhere would be safe. These colonists would need to defend themselves, and they would need to do it better than New Geneva had managed. "Change of lesson plan," he announced to the group. We're going to talk about asymmetric warfare, how a small number of skilled marksmen can neutralize a much larger force. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus taught his students everything he could about fighting an enemy with superior technology and numbers. He showed them how to calculate ballistic trajectories in low gravity, how to account for alien atmospheric compositions, how to identify weak points in Zephyrian armor and vehicles. Most importantly, he taught them patience. The Empire relies on overwhelming force and psychological intimidation, he explained while demonstrating proper firing positions. But they've never faced an enemy that can kill them from 2 kilometers away, while remaining completely invisible. They don't understand what human snipers can do when we're properly motivated. That evening, Marcus packed his equipment and prepared to leave for Earth. The Colonial Defense Force was providing transport, but the journey would take 2 weeks even with military fast-track routing. 2 weeks while Sarah and thousands of other women endured whatever horrors the Empire had planned for them. As he secured his rifle case, Marcus noticed a small photo tucked into the foam padding. It showed him and Sarah at their wedding, both of them laughing at something his father had said during the ceremony. Sarah was wearing the simple blue dress she had chosen because it matches your eyes when you're being serious about something important. Marcus studied the photo for a long moment, memorizing every detail of Sarah's face. Then he carefully placed it in his breast pocket, close to his heart. The transport ship that picked him up was already carrying 15 other recalled snipers. Marcus recognized most of them from previous conflicts. There was Rodriguez, who had held the record for longest confirmed kill until Marcus broke it during the asteroid mining riots. Chen's old spotter Jimmy Park was there, along with the legendary Maria Santos, whose precision with explosive rounds had earned her the nickname Thunder. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, the snipers gathered in the common area to share intelligence. The picture that emerged was devastating. The Empire had been planning this operation for months, possibly years. They had studied human psychology, identified key weaknesses in colonial defenses, and struck with surgical precision. They hit the soft targets first, Rodriguez explained, projecting a holographic map of the attacks. Agricultural colonies, research stations, small settlements, places with minimal military presence. They want to test our response before moving on to the defended worlds. Then they underestimated us, Santos said quietly. They think we'll negotiate, try to find a diplomatic solution while our families suffer. They don't understand that they've just declared war on the one species in the galaxy that perfected the art of killing from extreme range. Marcus nodded, feeling the collective mood in the room shift. These weren't just soldiers anymore. They were hunters who had been given prey that deserved no mercy. The Empire had made a fundamental miscalculation about human nature. The Zephyrians would learn, but the lesson would be written in blood across the stars. The briefing room on Luna Base felt like a tomb. 47 of humanity's deadliest snipers sat in perfect silence as Admiral Walsh activated the holographic display. The images that materialized above the conference table showed the aftermath of 23 colony raids. Empty settlements, abandoned homes, children's toys scattered in dusty courtyards where families had been torn apart. Intelligence confirms that over 50,000 human women and children are now in Empire custody, Walsh began, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his eyes. Our diplomatic corps has been stonewalled. The Galactic Council refuses to intervene, claiming the Empire's actions fall within their rights as a superior species. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Around the table, he could see similar reactions from his fellow snipers. These were people who had dedicated their lives to protecting human colonies, only to discover that the galaxy viewed their species as chattel. The Empire believes they hold all the advantages, Walsh continued. Superior technology, larger fleets, established political connections. They've never faced sustained asymmetric warfare from a species like ours. That ends today. The holographic display shifted to show detailed schematics of Zephyrian military installations, processing centers, breeding facilities, command posts, supply depots. Each location was marked with precise coordinates and defensive assessments. Operation Ghost Protocol begins in 72 hours, Walsh announced. 47 teams, 47 targets, simultaneous strikes across Empire space. We're going to teach them that taking human families has consequences they never imagined. Maria Santos raised her hand. Rules of engagement, sir? Walsh's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. There are no rules. The Empire declared total war the moment they started harvesting our people. We respond in kind. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus worked with his assigned spotter, a young woman named Lieutenant Casey Miller who had graduated top of her class from the Sniper Academy. Together they studied their target, a processing facility on Kepler 442b, where intelligence suggested newly captured women were being held for evaluation. The facility is built into a mountainside, Miller explained, projecting detailed topographical maps. Natural defensive position, but it gives us options for long-range engagement. There's a ridge system approximately 3 kilometers out that provides excellent concealment and multiple firing positions. Marcus studied the tactical situation. The facility was defended by automated turrets and a garrison of 50 Zephyrian soldiers. Under normal circumstances, it would be considered impregnable to a small force. But the Empire had never dealt with human snipers operating under no constraints. Primary targets are the command staff, Marcus said, highlighting several positions on the facility schematic. We take out leadership first, then systematically eliminate perimeter guards. Once the garrison is neutralized, we breach and extract our people. And if we encounter resistance during extraction, Marcus's voice carried the cold finality that had made him legendary during the Proxima conflict. Then we kill everything that moves until our people are safe. The insertion went smoothly. Marcus and Miller used a stealth transport to reach Kepler 442b undetected, then hiked 15 kilometers through alien wilderness to reach their overwatch position. The ridge provided perfect concealment while offering clear lines of sight to the facility below. Through his scope, Marcus could see the Empire's operation in sickening detail. Zephyrian guards herded groups of human women between buildings like livestock. The women looked exhausted and terrified, many still wearing the clothes they had been captured in days or weeks earlier. Some carried young children who clung to their mothers in obvious distress. I have visual on 17 guards, Miller reported through her spotting scope. Command post is the central tower, approximately 200 meters from the main detention building. Marcus adjusted his scope and identified the facility commander, a large Zephyrian with ornate armor markings. The alien was gesturing to subordinates while reviewing what appeared to be a tablet computer. Probably processing reports on the latest batch of captives. Target acquired, Marcus whispered into his communications device. Ghost 7, this is Ghost 1. Confirm all teams are in position. The response came back in a series of quiet confirmations. Across Empire space, 46 other sniper teams were preparing to deliver simultaneous strikes. The Zephyrians had no idea that death was watching them through telescopic sights. All teams, this is Ghost Actual. Admiral Walsh's voice crackled through the encrypted channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to remind the galaxy why humanity doesn't make good prey. Execute, 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 Marcus squeezed the trigger. The hypersonic flechette round crossed 3 kilometers in less than 2 seconds, punching through the facility commander's skull with surgical precision. The alien dropped instantly, his tablet clattering to the ground. Around the facility, chaos erupted as other key personnel began falling to invisible gunfire. The Zephyrian soldiers tried to take cover, but they had no idea where the shots were coming from. Their technology was designed to counter direct assaults, not long-range precision fire from concealed positions. Command staff neutralized, Miller reported. Perimeter guards are attempting to coordinate response. Marcus shifted targets smoothly, his rifle cycling fresh rounds with mechanical precision. Each shot was calculated for maximum psychological impact as well as lethality. The Empire soldiers needed to understand that nowhere was safe, that death could reach them from impossible distances. Within 15 minutes, the garrison was down to less than half strength. The surviving guards had barricaded themselves inside buildings, abandoning their posts to save their own lives. The facility's automated defenses were useless against enemies they couldn't detect or target. Beginning breach protocol, Marcus announced. He and Miller moved down from the ridge, using the facility's own defensive positions for cover as they approached the detention buildings. The Zephyrians' fear worked in their favor now. The remaining guards were too terrified to mount an organized defense. The detention building doors were secured with biometric locks, but Miller carried explosive charges designed specifically for alien security systems. The breaching took less than 30 seconds. Inside, Marcus found horror beyond imagination. Dozens of women were confined in cells barely large enough for human occupancy. Many showed signs of medical experimentation, injection sites, bandaged areas where tissue samples had been taken. Some were barely conscious from whatever drugs they had been given. "Sarah," Marcus called out, moving quickly through the cell blocks. His heart hammered as he searched face after face, hoping and dreading in equal measure. "Marcus?" The voice was weak but unmistakable. Sarah appeared at the bars of a cell near the back of the building, her face gaunt but her eyes blazing with the same determination he remembered. Marcus's hands shook as he activated the cell release mechanism. When the door opened, Sarah collapsed into his arms, and for a moment the war, the Empire, everything else ceased to exist. She was alive. She was here. Nothing else mattered. How many others? Sarah whispered against his chest. Marcus looked around at the dozens of women now emerging from their cells. This facility alone held nearly 200 captives, and there were dozens of similar installations across Empire space. "All of them," he said quietly. "We're getting all of them back." Admiral Kethavar stood before the Galactic Council chamber, his scaled hide shifting to deep purple with rage. The holographic displays around him showed the devastation that had swept across Empire space in just 24 hours. 47 facilities destroyed, over 3,000 Imperial personnel dead, and thousands of human captives liberated by forces that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "Honored counselors," Kethavar began, his voice resonating with barely controlled fury. "The human species has revealed their true nature. They are not the primitive farmers and miners we assessed them to be. They are apex predators disguised as civilized beings." The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from a dozen species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Empire's military might had been the foundation of galactic stability for 3 centuries. Seeing it humbled by a recently spacefaring species was deeply unsettling. Counselor WarHFY, the Altarian representative, leaned forward in his crystalline chair. "Admiral, your initial report suggested the humans possessed minimal military capabilities. How do you explain this? Miscalculation?" Kethavar's secondary arms gestured toward the tactical displays. "We evaluated their colonial defense forces and found them adequate for dealing with pirates and wildlife. We observed their regular military exercises and deemed their technology inferior to ours. What we failed to understand is that humans have perfected warfare at extreme range." The holographic displays shifted to show security footage from the attacks. In grainy, distant images, Imperial soldiers could be seen falling to invisible gunfire. Guard towers exploded without warning. Command posts were systematically eliminated by enemies who never appeared on sensors. "They call themselves snipers," Kethavar continued. "Individual warriors capable of eliminating targets from distances exceeding 5 kilometers. Our defensive systems are designed to counter massed assaults, orbital bombardments, conventional tactics. We have no countermeasures for enemies who can kill our commanders before we even know they're present." The Thylorian counselor, an insectoid being with compound eyes, clicked her mandibles nervously. "Surely your intelligence networks detected the movement of human military assets. This operation required significant coordination." "That's the most disturbing aspect," Kethavar replied. "We detected nothing. No fleet movements, no military communications, no logistical preparations. These attacks were carried out by individuals who infiltrated our space using civilian transport, carrying weapons we didn't recognize as threats until they opened fire." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans could strike anywhere without warning, using minimal resources and civilian cover, then no Imperial installation was safe. Counselor Zareth, the Vegan representative, spoke carefully. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" Kethavar's scale shifted to a darker hue. "Total extermination. The human species represents an existential threat to galactic order. They cannot be controlled, cannot be contained, cannot be negotiated with. Every human colony must be sterilized, every human ship destroyed, every human world turned to glass." The announcement triggered chaos in the chamber. Some counselors supported the proposal, arguing that the humans had demonstrated they were too dangerous to coexist with civilized species. Others protested that genocide violated the most fundamental principles of galactic law. While the council debated, Kethavar was already implementing his solution. Across Empire space, battle fleets received new orders. No more capture missions, no more selective targeting. Every human presence was to be eliminated with extreme prejudice. On Earth, Admiral Walsh monitored the Empire's response through long-range surveillance networks. The sudden mobilization of Imperial battle groups told the story clearly. The Empire had abandoned any pretense of civilization and was preparing for total war. "They're moving everything," Intelligence Chief Rodriguez reported. 47 battle groups converging on known human positions. This isn't a military response anymore. It's an extermination campaign. Walsh studied the tactical displays with the calm expression that had made him legendary during the Proxima conflict. Around him, the command center buzzed with activity as Earth's defenses prepared for the coming storm. "How long until the first wave reaches our outer colonies?" Walsh asked. 18 hours to Kepler 442b, 36 hours to our installations in the Vega system. They'll reach Earth in approximately 1 week. Walsh nodded slowly. The Empire's response was predictable but disappointing. They had learned nothing from the sniper raids except fear. That fear would make them dangerous but also careless. "Signal all ghost teams," Walsh ordered. Phase 2 is now active. Target priority shifts to Imperial logistics and command vessels. Make them afraid to leave port. Marcus received the new orders while evacuating rescued captives from the Kepler 442b facility. The Empire's escalation changed everything. What had begun as a rescue operation was now a fight for human survival. "Sarah, I need you to coordinate medical support for the other freed captives," he said, checking his rifle's ammunition supply. "The Empire is sending everything they have. This facility is about to become very dangerous." Sarah nodded, her expression grim but determined. The medical experiments performed on her and the other captives had left her weakened but not broken. If anything, her time in Imperial custody had only hardened her resolve. "What about you?" Marcus shouldered his rifle and checked his equipment one final time. "Miller and I are going hunting. The Empire wants to respond with overwhelming force, but they have to command those forces from somewhere. Command ships make excellent targets." The next phase of human resistance would test everything they had learned about fighting superior numbers with superior skill. The Empire had massive fleets and advanced technology, but they still needed to communicate, coordinate, and resupply. Human snipers would remind them that every admiral giving orders was just another target waiting to be eliminated. As Marcus and Miller moved out toward their new Overwatch position, Sarah watched through the facility's windows. In the distance, she could see the first Imperial reinforcements entering the system. Dozens of massive warships that could reduce the entire planet to molten slag. But she had seen what her husband could do with a rifle and clear line of sight. The Empire was about to learn that overwhelming force meant nothing if your commanders kept dying before they could use it. The real war was just beginning. The Imperial battle group emerged from hyperspace with all the ceremony befitting the Empire's might. 43 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 3 centuries of galactic dominance. Admiral Kethvar observed the deployment from the bridge of his flagship, the INV Dominion, satisfied that no force in the galaxy could stand against such overwhelming power. Marcus Chen watched the same fleet through his rifle scope from a position on Kepler 442b's largest moon. The Empire's predictability had made this shot possible. Imperial doctrine required command vessels to maintain specific formations and communication protocols. Those protocols had just painted a target on every senior officer in the fleet. "Range to target?" Marcus asked quietly. Miller adjusted her spotting scope and ran calculations through her tactical computer. 8.7 kilometers to the Dominion's bridge superstructure. Atmospheric interference minimal. Gravity differential accounted for. You'll need to lead the target by approximately 30 centimeters to account for the ship's orbital movement. Marcus made minute adjustments to his scope and breathing. This shot would push his equipment to its absolute limits. The custom-designed penetrator round in his rifle's chamber was specifically engineered to punch through starship armor. But hitting a target the size of a conference table from this distance required perfection. Through his scope, he could see movement on the Dominion's bridge. Zephyrian officers moving between control stations, their scaled forms clearly visible through the transparent aluminum viewports that Imperial designers favored for their command vessels. "Target acquired," Marcus whispered into his communicator. "Ghost teams prepare for coordinated strike. We take out their command structure in 3, 2, 1. 47 rifles fired simultaneously across the Empire fleet. Hypersonic rounds crossed impossible distances in seconds, finding their marks with surgical precision. Bridge viewports shattered, command centers erupted in chaos, and the Empire's perfect formation began to dissolve. As ships lost contact with their leadership, Admiral Kethvar felt the Dominion shudder as the penetrator round punched through the bridge's armored viewport. The projectile missed him by centimeters, instead finding his tactical officer who had been standing at the central display. The Zephyrian's head simply disappeared in a spray of alien blood and bone fragments. Battle stations, Kethvar roared, but the damage was already spreading throughout the fleet. Command ships were reporting catastrophic casualties among their senior staff. Navigation officers, weapons coordinators, fleet tactical commanders all falling to invisible gunfire from impossible ranges. "Sir, we're receiving distress signals from the entire fleet," his communications officer reported, her voice shaking. "The Retribution reports their captain is dead. The Vengeance has lost all bridge crew. The destroyer claims their weapon systems are offline after their gunnery chief was eliminated." Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing horror. In less than 5 minutes, his carefully coordinated battle group had been reduced to a collection of rudderless ships. The humans weren't attacking his vessels, they were assassinating his people. "Scan for enemy positions," he ordered. "They have to be somewhere on the planet's surface or nearby asteroids." "Negative contacts on all sensors, sir. Whatever weapons they're using aren't generating detectable energy signatures." This was impossible. No projectile weapon could achieve the accuracy and range his fleet was experiencing. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Across his formation, trained Imperial officers were dying to enemies that couldn't be detected, located, or countered. Marcus cycled another round and shifted targets. The Empire's response was predictably chaotic. Ships were breaking formation, trying to present smaller targets while their surviving crews attempted to coordinate a response. But without their command staff, the vessels were operating in isolation, unable to execute the complex maneuvers that Imperial doctrine required. "Secondary targets presenting," Miller reported. "Multiple ships have elevated junior officers to bridge command positions." "Then we educate the junior officers too," Marcus replied coldly. His rifle spoke again, and another Imperial bridge erupted in chaos as its new commander joined his predecessor in death. The psychological impact was devastating. Across the fleet, Imperial crews began abandoning their posts rather than risk promotion to leadership positions that had become death sentences. Ships drifted without guidance while their crews huddled in interior compartments, afraid to approach any station that might make them visible to the invisible killers. Kethvar realized his fleet was effectively neutralized without losing a single vessel to direct fire. The humans had turned the Empire's own command structure against itself. Every ship was intact but useless, crewed by terrified personnel who refused to take responsibility for tactical decisions. "Signal retreat," he ordered grimly. All ships returned to hyperspace immediately. But even retreat proved costly. As ships began orienting for jump, their navigation officers became priority targets. Several vessels lost helm control mid-maneuver, drifting helplessly as their steering crews died at their posts. The mighty Imperial fleet that had entered the system with such confidence limped away 12 hours later, leaving behind only debris and the shattered remains of Imperial authority. They had achieved nothing except demonstrating that human snipers could reach anyone, anywhere, regardless of armor or defensive positions. Meanwhile, across human space, similar scenes played out as ghost teams systematically dismantled Imperial command structures. The Empire's vast military machine began grinding to a halt as its leadership hemorrhaged under sustained sniper fire. Sarah Chen worked frantically in the medical facility that had been hastily established for rescued captives. Reports kept streaming in from other liberation operations, thousands of human women and children freed as Imperial installations fell to precision strikes. But the rescued captives brought horrific stories of what they had endured: medical experiments, forced breeding programs, psychological torture designed to break human resistance. The Empire's crimes against humanity went far beyond simple kidnapping. "How many more facilities are out there?" Sarah asked Marcus when he returned from his latest mission. "Intelligence estimates at least 200 major installations," Marcus replied, cleaning his rifle with the methodical care that all snipers learned, plus smaller sites, research laboratories, processing centers. "The Empire built an entire infrastructure around harvesting our people." Sarah felt cold rage building in her chest. The Empire hadn't just attacked human colonies. They had systematically planned the enslavement of her entire species. Men reduced to forced labor, women treated as breeding stock, children raised as property. "What happens after we rescue everyone?" she asked. Marcus met her eyes, and Sarah saw something in them that reminded her why Imperial soldiers had learned to fear human snipers. Then we make sure it never happens again. The Empire wanted to treat us like animals. They're about to discover what happens when animals develop the ability to kill from 8 kilometers away. The war had evolved beyond rescue operations. This was now about survival, justice, and ensuring that no species would ever again view humanity as prey. The Empire's extermination order had sealed their fate. They had made this a war of extinction, and humans intended to be the ones left standing when the shooting stopped. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth had produced predators capable of tracking prey across continents. Space was just a larger hunting ground, and Imperial personnel had become the hunted. The Galactic Council chamber had never hosted such a gathering of fear. Representatives from 43 species packed the amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a babble of terror and desperation. At the center of the chamber, the holographic displays told a story of systematic destruction that defied every assumption about galactic warfare. In 6 months, the human sniper campaign had crippled the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dominated space for centuries through superior technology and overwhelming force, was collapsing under the weight of a war they couldn't understand or counter. "The casualty reports are beyond comprehension," announced Councillor WarHFY, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. Over 50,000 Imperial personnel eliminated by forces numbering less than 200 individuals. Their entire command structure has been systematically dismantled. The displays showed the grim mathematics of asymmetric warfare. Imperial fleets sat motionless at their bases, unwilling to deploy because every mission resulted in dead commanders. Supply chains had collapsed as logistics officers refused to coordinate movements that might expose them to sniper fire. Research installations, breeding facilities, and military academies lay abandoned after their staff evacuated, rather than face invisible death. Councillor Zareth, speaking for the Vegan delegation, voiced what everyone was thinking. How do we negotiate with an enemy we cannot locate or contact? The humans have ignored every communication attempt. They refuse to acknowledge our authority or respond to diplomatic overtures. Admiral Walsh's voice suddenly filled the chamber, transmitted through hijacked communication systems that demonstrated humanity's growing technological sophistication. "Honored councillors, we have been listening to your deliberations with interest." Chaos erupted as security systems failed to trace or block the transmission. The humans had somehow penetrated the Council's most secure networks without triggering any defensive protocols. "You speak of negotiation," Walsh continued calmly, "but negotiation implies equality between parties. You have demonstrated that you view humanity as livestock to be harvested for breeding programs. We view you as predators that must be eliminated to protect our species." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't fighting for territorial control or resource access. This was an extermination campaign driven by biological imperatives that galactic civilization had never encountered. "The Empire took our women and children." Walsh's voice carried a cold finality that chilled alien blood. "They performed medical experiments on our people. They planned to reduce our species to cattle for their genetic improvement programs. That transgression demands a response beyond your comprehension." Councillor WarHFY found his voice. "Admiral Walsh, surely we can reach an accommodation." "The Empire's actions were unauthorized by the Council. We are prepared to offer substantial reparations and guarantee the safety of all human territories." "Your guarantees are worthless," Walsh replied. "You allowed this to happen once. Your species will allow it to happen again when humanity seems weak or vulnerable. We have studied galactic history. This pattern has repeated for centuries with other species that you deemed inferior." The displays shifted to show archived Council records spanning 300 years. Species after species had been subjected to similar integration programs by various galactic powers, with the Council maintaining plausible deniability while allowing the strong to prey upon the weak. But those species lacked the ability to defend themselves effectively. Walsh continued. "They accepted their fate because resistance seemed hopeless. Humanity rejects that paradigm. We have demonstrated that any species willing to commit genocide against humans will face extinction in return." Admiral Kethvar materialized in the chamber via emergency hologram, his scaled hide showing the stress patterns of a being pushed beyond endurance. "Councillors, the Empire formally requests immediate intervention." The human threat must be contained before they achieve technological parity with galactic civilization. Walsh's laugh carried no humor. Admiral, your species declared war on humanity when you decided our women were suitable for breeding stock. You mobilized for our total extermination when we demonstrated the ability to defend ourselves. The war you started will continue until one of our species no longer exists. But this is madness, HFY protested. Your entire species numbers less than 50 billion individuals scattered across a few dozen worlds. The Empire controls thousands of systems with trillions of citizens. The mathematics of warfare favor us overwhelmingly. The mathematics of warfare favored you, Walsh corrected. Past tense. Your military doctrine assumes enemies who fight according to galactic conventions, massed fleets, territorial objectives, infrastructure targets. You have no countermeasures for enemies who can eliminate your leadership from impossible ranges without warning. The truth of that statement was undeniable. Imperial forces had effectively ceased offensive operations because no commander would accept positions that made them targets for human snipers. The Empire's vast technological superiority meant nothing if their personnel were too terrified to use it. Admiral HFY speaks of mathematics, Walsh continued. Let me offer different mathematics. Humanity has trained approximately 10,000 sniper-qualified personnel over the past century. Each one is capable of eliminating between 50 and 200 targets before being neutralized. Conservative estimates suggest we can kill 2 million Imperial personnel before exhausting our operational capacity. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species representatives performed their own calculations. 2 million deaths would represent the complete destruction of the Empire's military leadership, their scientific community, their political structure, everything that held their civilization together. However, Walsh's tone shifted slightly. Humanity is not interested in prolonged warfare. We prefer efficient solutions to existential threats, which brings me to our final offer. The displays changed to show detailed schematics of Zephyr Prime, the Empire's homeworld. Every major population center, government building, and infrastructure hub was marked with precision targeting data. 47 human sniper teams are currently positioned throughout Zephyr Prime, Walsh announced calmly. Each team carries experimental weapons capable of eliminating targets at ranges exceeding 20 kilometers. Every member of the Imperial Leadership Council, every senior military commander, every research scientist involved in the breeding program, all have been identified and targeted. HFY's scales shifted to pure white with terror. That's impossible. Our security networks would have detected any infiltration. Admiral, your security networks were designed to detect conventional military forces. They cannot identify individuals who enter your space as refugees, students, or traitors, then reveal their true nature only when ready to strike. The implications were staggering. If humans could infiltrate the Empire's most secure world undetected, then nowhere in galactic space was safe from their reach. The Council has 1 hour to consider humanity's terms, Walsh announced. Total withdrawal of all Imperial forces from human space. Complete dismantlement of breeding facilities and research programs. Transfer of all surviving human captives to neutral custody for repatriation. Formal recognition of humanity as an off-limits species under galactic law. And if these terms are rejected? Counselor Zareth asked quietly. Then in 61 minutes the Empire ceases to exist as a political entity. Every individual responsible for crimes against humanity dies simultaneously. Their homeworld's infrastructure is systematically destroyed. Their ability to wage interstellar warfare is permanently eliminated. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside across the galaxy, billions of beings waited to learn whether humanity would add another extinct species to galactic history, or whether the Empire would become the first galactic power to surrender unconditionally to a species they had previously considered primitive. The surrender came with 11 minutes remaining on humanity's ultimatum. Admiral HFY's transmission reached every human sniper team simultaneously, his voice carrying the defeat of a species that had never known true fear until they encountered Earth's children. The Zephyrian Empire formally accepts all human terms without condition, HFY announced, his scales displaying the gray pallor of complete submission. All Imperial forces are withdrawing from human space immediately. Breeding facilities are being dismantled under neutral observation. Human captives are being transferred to Galactic Red Cross custody for repatriation. Marcus, Chen maintained his sight picture on the Imperial leadership compound, even as the surrender order echoed through his earpiece. Through his scope, he could see Zephyrian officials evacuating government buildings in obvious panic. They understood that 47 rifles were trained on them from impossible ranges, and that only their species' complete capitulation stood between them and extinction. Ghost teams. This is Ghost Actual. Admiral Walsh's voice crackled through the communication network. Confirmed surrender received and verified. Stand down from primary targets but maintain overwatch positions until all human personnel are safely recovered. Marcus finally allowed himself to relax, though his finger remained near the trigger. 6 months of the most intensive warfare humanity had ever conducted was ending, not with massive fleet battles or planetary bombardments, but with the simple acknowledgement that some species were too dangerous to provoke. How long until Sarah's transport reaches the rendezvous point? Marcus asked Miller, who was monitoring extraction operations from their concealed position. 4 hours, Miller replied, lowering her spotting scope. The medical transports are moving slowly because many of the rescued women need intensive care. The Empire's breeding experiments cause significant physical and psychological trauma. Marcus nodded grimly. The war might be ending, but its consequences would affect human civilization for generations. Thousands of women had endured horrors that would require years of healing. Children had been born in captivity and would need careful integration into human society. The Empire's crimes against humanity extended far beyond simple kidnapping, but the broader implications were even more significant. In 6 months of asymmetric warfare, humanity had fundamentally altered the balance of power in galactic civilization. The species that had dominated space for centuries was now reduced to a shadow of its former influence, while humans had emerged as the galaxy's newest apex predator. 3 months after the surrender, Sarah. Chen stood before the newly constructed Human Defense Council headquarters on Luna Base. The building had been designed as both a military command center and a monument to humanity's emergence as a galactic power. Its architecture deliberately incorporated elements from human sniper equipment, clean lines, functional design, and an emphasis on precision over ornamentation. The casualty reports make for sobering reading, Sarah told the assembled delegates from human colonies across known space. 83,000 human women and children were taken during the Empire's campaign. We successfully recovered 79,000 individuals. 4,000 remain unaccounted for. The numbers represented both triumph and tragedy. The largest hostage rescue operation in galactic history had succeeded beyond all reasonable expectations. But every unaccounted individual represented a family that would never be whole again. Medical examinations of recovered personnel reveal the full scope of the Empire's crimes, Sarah continued. Genetic experimentation, forced breeding attempts, psychological conditioning programs designed to break human resistance. Many of our people will require extensive rehabilitation. Marcus listened from his position at the Tactical Planning Station, where he was coordinating the establishment of humanity's new defensive doctrine. The war had proven that conventional galactic military strategies were inadequate for protecting human interests. Earth's colonies would need a fundamentally different approach to security. The Sniper Corps will be expanded to include personnel from every human world, Marcus announced when Sarah concluded her medical briefing. We're establishing training facilities on 12 colony worlds, with advanced specialization programs for extreme-range operations. Every human settlement will have resident sniper teams capable of responding to any threat. The transformation of human space reflected lessons learned during the war. Agricultural colonies were being reinforced with concealed defensive positions optimized for long-range engagement. Research stations included facilities for developing advanced sniper weapons and tactics. Even civilian transports carried small teams of marksmen, trained to eliminate threats that conventional weapons couldn't address. What about our relationship with the broader galactic community? Asked Maria Santos, who had been promoted to Director of External Operations. The Council is treating us very carefully now, but fear-based diplomacy has limitations. Admiral Walsh activated the main display, showing humanity's current position in galactic politics. We're being offered membership in the Council with full voting rights. Several species have proposed mutual defense treaties. The trading guilds want exclusive agreements for human agricultural products and manufactured goods. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. 6 months ago, Humanity had been classified as a primitive species suitable for exploitation. Now they were being courted as equals by the same galactic powers that had previously ignored their existence. Our response will be measured but firm, Walsh continued. We'll participate in galactic civilization, but on our terms. Any species that demonstrates hostile intent toward human colonies will face immediate and disproportionate retaliation. The galaxy needs to understand that attacking humanity carries consequences they cannot afford. The new doctrine represented a fundamental shift in human philosophy. For centuries, Earth's children had approached space exploration with optimism and cooperation. They had assumed that galactic civilization would welcome them as equals, that their peaceful intentions would be recognized and respected. The Empire's betrayal had shattered those assumptions. Humanity now understood that the galaxy was filled with predators who viewed newer species as prey. That knowledge had transformed human civilization from naive explorers into something far more dangerous. The Empire's collapse has created power vacuums throughout their former territory, reported Intelligence Chief Rodriguez. 17 species are competing for control of abandoned systems. Some are requesting human assistance in establishing new governments. Which brings us to our final decision, Walsh said quietly. The Empire controlled nearly 3,000 systems at the height of their power. Their withdrawal has left billions of beings without effective government or protection. Do we fill that vacuum, or allow other species to claim imperial territory? The question touched the heart of humanity's future in galactic civilization. They possessed the demonstrated ability to dominate other species through superior warfare capabilities. The choice now was whether to use that power for territorial expansion or focus on protecting their own people. Sarah spoke for many when she said, "We fought this war to protect human families, not to build an empire. Let other species govern themselves. Our responsibility is ensuring that no one ever again views humanity as suitable prey." Marcus nodded agreement. The Empire fell because they mistook patience for weakness, defensive posture for vulnerability. We'll maintain that deception. Let the galaxy think we're peaceful farmers and scientists who just happen to be very good at killing anyone who threatens our families. The strategy reflected humanity's unique approach to survival. Unlike species that projected power through massive fleets or territorial expansion, humans would remain seemingly peaceful while maintaining the demonstrated ability to eliminate any threat through precision violence. 2 years after the war's end, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council to deliver humanity's first official address to the assembled species. The chamber that had once debated the legal framework for harvesting human women now listened with respectful attention to Earth's diplomatic representative. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all galactic species, Sarah announced, her words carrying the quiet authority of someone who had survived the Empire's worst intentions. We offer friendship, trade, and cooperation to any beings who approach us with similar intent. But we also carry a simple message for any species considering aggression against human worlds. The chamber fell, silent as Sarah's tone shifted to match the cold finality that had made human snipers legendary across the galaxy. We remember what happened to our families. We remember who helped and who stood aside. And we remember that every species in this chamber chose to remain silent while the Empire planned our enslavement. Those memories inform every decision we make about galactic relations. The warning was unmistakable. Humanity had emerged from the crucible of total war with capabilities that terrified galactic civilization. They had proven that superior technology and overwhelming numbers meant nothing against enemies who could eliminate leadership from impossible ranges. More importantly, they had demonstrated the psychological impact of asymmetric warfare. The Empire's collapse hadn't resulted from